FAIRtax is coming, don't stand in the way. FAIRtax is coming across the USA. FAIRtax is coming, clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey! Hey, hey!
Hello and welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are
The FAIRtax Guys.
And we remain dedicated to the proposition that the IRS is a criminal enterprise that needs to go away. And we got a really good replacement for it called the fair tax.
Yep, that'll do it. No IRS needed. And we talked about this in the last episode, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. If you have not heard the last episode where we do the FAIRtax helpline thing, that's rather amusing, I would think. One of our better episodes, I must say. We even enlisted our wives to help us out with that one.
Yeah, that was great. It was a lot of fun.
But the whole idea is that people are in this box thinking that the income tax is just so entrenched in our lives, so entrenched in the government, and therefore entrenched in our lives, that it's immovable. We can't get rid of it. It's just something we're going to have to live with. And people just continue to have that in their mindset. And we've got to get people to change that thinking. Realize the IRS can be gotten rid of.
Yeah.
We don't need it. There is a much better way to do that. And you just do not have to accept that monstrosity in your life just because it's always been. Of course, income tax has been around for over 100 years.
Yeah, that's right.
16th Amendment was ratified in 1913. So there is nobody working today who was under the old system. The income tax is all everybody's known, but it does not make it the best way to do it. In fact, it's really the worst way you can think of to fund the government.
And, you see this when you first introduce the fair tax concept to somebody, and they get that look in their eye, and they kind of look towards the sky, and they're trying to imagine what you're talking about, because like Bob says, they are a prisoner in this box of the income tax. That's all they can think of. That's all they've known. But here's a tool, here's a technique that I've used. We have the advantage here in Florida where Bob and I live. Florida doesn't have an income tax. We have a sales tax, and a few other ancillary taxes. But primarily, we fund the state with a sales tax. So here in Florida, I tell people, the fair tax, it's a sales tax, get rid of the income tax, the IRS, much like we have in Florida, where we have a sales tax and we don't have an income tax. And you can see the wheels turning and people start to understand. So that helps a little bit. But yeah, we are very largely trapped in this income tax box frame of mind. And it's hard to break out of, but we need to continue to help people break out of that box.
Yes, but just imagine for a moment a world without the income tax.
Oh.
Now, we've had an income tax, as we said, for over 100 years. We've had withholding, which I think is the most insidious feature of the income. That's not a feature, that's a bug of the income tax. That the government grabs its pound of flesh directly out of your paycheck, directly out of your retirement distribution, including Social Security. If you're lucky enough to win the lottery or win a big prize on a game show, Uncle Sam is right there with his hand out before you walk off the stage. And you are just so used to having a difference between what you earn, i.e. gross pay, and what you bring home, your net pay. People just don't even think of that difference as their money. Yeah. They look at the bottom line of their paycheck. Oh, I bring home this much this year. They don't even notice what the government is taking away from them. And that does not have to happen. How would you like to work, 40 hours a week at $10 an hour and bring home $400?
Yeah. And, if you get paid once a week and they take out a certain amount for withholding, that's bad enough. But add it up over the whole year. Take a look at your gross pay and your take-home pay and see how much is going to Uncle Sam before you are allowed to support your family. That's the worst part of this, is that the income tax or the withholding tax puts the government as their higher priority than supporting your family. It's insidious. And unfortunately, they do it in a kind of a sly way, so you don't really see it. It doesn't really hurt that much, but it does.
Yeah, but people just accept that.
Yeah.
Why do you just accept that? when you can have a world with no income tax, no withholding. Also, the payroll taxes that support Social Security and Medicare go away. Support for those programs is continued in the fair tax. We're just changing the funding model. We're not getting rid of the program, but we are getting rid of the payroll tax. The most regressive tax on the planet, by the way. That's something you don't get back if you're working poor.
Yep.
And I tell you, it's just insane why people continue to live under this income tax, which changes literally on a daily basis.
Just about. You got the legislative report
yes,
there?
we've been keeping an eye on the Congress.gov website here at FAIRtax Power Radio ever since the new Congress took office in January. We've been keeping track of how many bills, how many proposals are before the Congress to change the income tax code. Now, and the best way we can do that, this is probably inexact, but it's close, is to scan for the string Internal Revenue Code. So if you scan for that string on Congress.gov, you get back. We started off with just a couple hundred.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago when we did our last Fair Tax Live, it was close to 600. And now there are 648 as we speak, as we're recording this today. There are 648 proposals to change the Internal Revenue Code of 1986.
And that's only 5 months of Congress, a little over 5 months of the new Congress. Yeah. And there's well over almost 650 proposals to change the tax code. And if there's any proposals in there that don't start with that string Internal Revenue Code of 1986, well, we missed those. So there could be more than 648.
There's probably more, but 648 is a pretty decent idea. Of course, not all of those are going to pass.
No.
But when you look at the ones that did pass, over the past decade, it averages to more than one per day that do pass.
So there's no stability to the tax code. Whatever the tax code is today, it won't be tomorrow. Because every day Congress is in session, they're changing it. That's about what it amounts to.
This latest one right up here at the top of the results is a shining example of Congress critter think. The way they think up there. H.R. 2814. has been introduced into Congress to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to impose a tax on employers whose employees receive certain federal benefits. Two problems with that.
Yeah.
How are you going to, if you've got 100 employees and not all of them receive the benefit, how are you going to distinguish? That's just more compliance costs, more time, more effort that the employer has to spend in order to comply with that law. But then again, the tax liability and those compliance costs are not going to be absorbed by the employer. They're going to be passed on down the line in the form of higher prices for their products or services, lower wages and benefits for their employees, and if it's a public company, less to distribute to shareholders. Individuals are going to pay that tax, not the employer.
Yeah, and there's another issue here. This is kind of a side issue, but why this congressperson wants to tax the benefits? Well, then if you're taxing the benefits, they're not benefits anymore, aren't they? But yeah, Bob is absolutely right. Everything that you add to the cost of doing business is borne by the consumer, the employees, or the shareholders. It's always borne by people. It's people that pay all these extra expenses, not the corporation. People have it in their mind that, the corporations have to pay their fair share. Corporations don't pay taxes. It's a cost of doing business. They pass it on to the consumer or other people every time.
Yeah, and it's easy for people to understand how the cost of labor and materials is passed on, but you tell them about the tax liability being passed on, and they just, you draw a blank stare from a lot of folks. But we've been beating up on the IRS and the income tax here on FAIRtax Power Radio, and with good reason. We'll continue to do so because they continue to deserve it. But I really want to get people to think of, of course, we need to get rid of the income tax. But what will it look like? What will the world look like without the income tax? You bring home your full gross amount. There's no withholding. You get a tax refund every month, not once a year, maybe, with a fair tax. It is just so much, and you can't monkey with it. You can't monkey with it. You got 648 proposals to change the tax code right now. The Congress critters continue to mess with the income tax, i.e. sell tax favors to lobbyists, or try to curry favor with a particular constituency. Yep. It's not fair. Everybody that gets a break means somebody else has to make up the difference.
Every time.
And we hit on this too. The evasion is insane.
Yeah. So between the lack of stability and the evasion, the income tax needs to go away. And, can we get Congress to do something about this before it comes a crisis? Right now,
Probably not.
I know that's a rhetorical question.
We need to keep banging on them, though.
Yeah. Bob just mentioned the evasion rate. The evasion rate is up to almost $700 billion. Now, take $700 billion and divide it by $320 million. And that is the cost that every one of us in this country is paying for the people who are evading taxes. At some point between evasion and lack of stability, we're going to reach a crisis situation where the income tax just totally fails, or it's so onerous or so inefficient it's just not working. We need to get Congress to do something before we reach that point. That's why we need your help, getting them to take a serious look at the fair tax. We know that people in Congress are familiar with the fair tax because the president of our national organization, Steve Hayes, he has been going up there for on a monthly basis for about 2 years. And the other board member, Peggy, that was going with him, well, she's recently retired, but we've got some other people going up there. But Steve has done a great job of introducing the concepts of the fair tax to Congress people and their staffers on both sides of the aisle. And he's gotten some warm receptions. Mm-hmm. But when it comes right down to it, what happens? Congress reverts back to what's easy and comfortable for them and not what's best for the country. We need to change that. We need to make it difficult for them to do the easy thing.
Yeah, so really start thinking outside the box, folks. Think about bringing home your full gross amount. Think about getting a tax refund every month, things that I don't know anybody, regardless of your political ideology or party affiliation or whatever, that would not like to have more money in your pocket. And by getting rid of the income tax, getting rid of withholding, getting rid of the payroll taxes, and start giving people a tax refund once a month, that is more money in everybody's pocket. What is not to like? I don't understand why people are still stuck in this century-old way of thinking that the income tax is just the way it's got to be.
Yeah, it's like you said before, it's all they know. They're kind of stuck in that box, and we just need to do a better job of getting the word out about the fair tax. So you can help, folks. Don't just keep Fair Tax Power Radio a secret to yourself. Let everybody know about it because it's absolutely free. If they listen on a computer, you can get it on Spreaker.com. That's like speaker with an R, Spreaker.com. If you use iTunes or anybody uses iTunes, we're on iTunes. And it's also on iHeartRadio. And we have a free app for both iPhones and Androids. A free app. Go to your app store, look for FairTax Power Radio, download it, and boom, there's all our episodes right there. You got, right now, let's see, this will be program number 60. So you got them all right there. And we handle a slightly different aspect of taxation every single week. A half hour every week. It'll keep you up to date. So please let other people know about this because it's got to be a grassroots effort, and the American citizenry has to demand this of the Congress. They have to feel the pain and understand that they're not going to get reelected if they don't bring about real tax reform.
All right. And while we're thinking about it, let's give folks a way to get a hold of us. TheFairtaxGuys@gmail.com is our email address. And we're on Facebook, The FairTax Guys. If you've got a Facebook account, which most people do, just go to our page. You can leave us a comment, leave us a question. We've gotten some pretty good feedback through there. So we encourage people to do that.
And we do, once a month, we do a Facebook Live. And that's really a lot of fun because it is live. If you're on Facebook, you can tune in and watch us there live in person, and you can type in questions and comments, and we handle them live. And plus we have our expert Randy Fisher, who's actually more of an expert on the fair tax than Bob and I are. I have to admit that. And if there's anything that comes up that we're not sure of, or what's going on with the national organization, he's right there to type a response. So it's a good environment, and it is live and interactive. You can, unlike this where, you can listen to us and then send us an email, and we'll do our best to get back to you. But Facebook Live is live. That's why they call it live.
All right. Well, I'm going to take a couple of seconds here and throw you a curveball that you didn't see coming. You're talking about people retiring. Mark Gupton, who has been the managing director in the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association where we are, he's been at it for over a decade. He is retiring, and the new president of the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association is
FAIRtax Ron.
They got you.
I was,
so congratulations, my friend.
Thank you. I'm not sure if it's congratulations or condolences,
Well,
but anyways, I am dedicated to getting this thing done. And, my wife just kind of rolled her eyes and said, I've got to do this. We need to continue what Mark has accomplished. Florida is a very strong fair tax state, very strong. But we've been losing a little ground, and we need to come up with some new ideas and so forth. So I'm dedicated to this. My radio partner Bob, there would be no FAIRtax Radio if it wasn't for Bob. I mean, he's got the radio experience, he's got the expertise, he's got the hardware, the software, and he knows radio, and so he's the one that makes this work. But I'm going to do my very best here in Florida and wherever else to try to bring about this change. So, and my wife will be right there with me too.
All right. Okay. You hit that pretty well. Now, Mr. President, I have a question for you. If we have an income tax, real simple question, or at least it ought to be, what is income?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's see. According to Merriam-Webster website, the definition of income. Now, the first one they have is something coming in. Well, we're not talking about that, like coming into the house. Or number 2, a gain or recurrent benefit usually measured in money that derives from capital or labor. Well, that's what most people think income is. You get income when you work or when you sell your capital, like sell a house or a car or something like that. That's income. Gee, wouldn't it be nice if it was just that simple, Bob?
I bet if you've got an IRS with 70,000 plus pages of tax code, it ain't that simple.
No, because Congress has kind of worked over the term income. And I got a printout from and I have to give credit to the TurboTax website. TurboTax, you go and do a search. What is income? A couple of pages come up. This question isn't as easy to answer as you might think. Most people realize that taxable income include wages, salaries, bonuses, commissions, and tips. But as you can see from this list, income, quote unquote, means a lot more than that to the IRS. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these because there's a lot of them here and we don't have time. But I've highlighted a few of them. Okay, let's say you're a landlord. You're renting out an apartment and you get a security deposit. That security deposit that you receive from the tenant is considered income. But what about when the tenant leaves and they leave the apartment in good shape and you have to send the security deposit back? Well, now it's an expense. So, I mean, what's the point? I guess the point is if you don't send the security deposit back, it's counted as income. But so the security deposit, which is your guarantee that the apartment is going to be left in good shape when the tenant leaves, is considered income. So the IRS wants security deposits counted as income.
Yeah, I wonder how many people receive those and don't report them.
Yeah, you think?
Can we say more evasion?
Yeah, the part of the evasion problem. Yeah.
Well, actually, that's evasion if it's done intentionally with the intent of not reporting, hiding income from the IRS. Right. But a lot of people just might not know. The tax code, again, is so complicated. You can run afoul of this in any hundreds of ways under the honest mistake heading,
That's right. I mean, who can understand 70,000 pages of tax code plus court decisions? I mean, nobody can handle all of that. Like Bob and I had said before, you get the software, you put it on your computer, and you hope that the people who wrote the software are up to speed on everything, and you just keep your fingers crossed because if the IRS wants to find something wrong in your tax return, they probably can.
Yeah, and they will tax you on something that you don't even hold. It's not in your possession. I'm looking at that next bullet point. Constructively received income. Go.
Okay. Constructively received income. Now, that doesn't mean a darn thing to me, I have to admit.
Something an auditor can nail you on.
This is income that was available to you even if it wasn't in your possession.
Read that again.
Okay.
Available
this is
to
income
you.
that was available to you even if it wasn't in your possession. And they give an
Okay,
possession.
raise your hands. How many of you actually knew that the IRS can tax you on income that's not in your hand, that you don't have?
Yeah.
Not too many people, I bet.
No. And does this contribute to evasion? Yeah, probably. If people don't know about it and don't understand that aspect of the income tax.
Okay, let's explain that a little better here.
Okay, they give an example. Let's say that you received a check in late December, but didn't deposit or cash it until January of next year. You must still include the check in your taxable income for the year you received the check, not the year you deposited it. So you received a check, and it's a piece of paper. Right now, you can't do a thing with it. You
and
can't.
The money's still in somebody else's account, not yours.
Exactly, until you either cash it or deposit it into your own bank account. So at that point, it's just a piece of paper, not to the IRS. That piece of paper represents income to you, whether you like it or not. So that's another one. That's what we mean by constructively received income.
Okay. Now, this is a particularly insidious one, I would think. Cancel debts. If you owe somebody some money and they forgive you that loan or that debt, even though no money changes hands, they just say, okay, you no longer owe this. The IRS wants to know about it, and they want to tax you on that.
That's crazy. I mean, we're the reason we're doing this, by the way, is Bob and I were in a meeting last week, and one of the ladies said, you guys ought to do a program on income. She's been working on forms. She has a son with a handicapping condition, and she's been trying to get benefits for him. Well, she has to fill out all these forms. And on the forms is what's considered income. And it's, this is a former educator. She's no dummy. I mean, she's a smart lady, but their different definitions of income are mind-boggling. And that's why we're doing this right now. Canceled debts is income. I mean, who'd have thunk it? That's crazy.
Yeah, and you see all these commercials on television about, if you owe so much on your credit card, 5-6 figures on your credit card, we'll help get that down for you, stuff like that. So this does happen.
Yeah, that's right. They don't tell you in those ads that if they do succeed in relieving you of some of that debt, you're still liable for the taxes on that debt.
Yeah. And the person to whom you owed that debt is obligated to report that forgiving to the IRS.
Oh,
so that's just more burden on them, more burden on you. And again, people wouldn't realize that a canceled debt is income that the IRS is going to tax you on. And if the if the bank or whatever it was that you owe that money to reports that, and you don't, you're probably going to get a knock on your door.
Remember the Cash for Clunkers program a few years ago?
Well,
yeah,
yes, I
people
do.
Found out that the Cash for Clunkers that they received was taxable. Yep. Okay.
And the list continues.
Unemployment benefits, they are considered taxable.
And the one right above that, strike benefits. If you go on strike and you get benefits from your union, that is taxable.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. So those are considered taxable income by the IRS. And above that is severance pay. All right? You submit your resignation or whatever, or you get fired and you get severance pay. Well,
my wife had to deal with that, and her job was outsourced to Mexico. That's something else the FAIRtax does. It brings all those jobs back, folks.
Interest and dividends. So you put some money in the bank and you let it accrue some interest and dividends. Well, as we know, and this one's quite common, this is no surprise to anybody, interest and dividends is also taxable. I mean, it prevents, I shouldn't say prevents, but I think it stymies investment, because when you put money in the bank and you let it accrue interest or dividends, that money is available to other people, like maybe startup businesses and so forth. And if you're not getting that much interest or dividends, or it's being hammered by taxes, you're going to be less inclined to invest. So, if we got rid of that, and of course the FAIRtax does get rid of the income tax altogether. And there would be no tax on income. So there would be more investment.
Oh, time is flying, but we've got to hit on this one. The value of bartered or non-cash services is considered income.
Yeah. So They give the example. If you're a lawyer and the plumber installs your kitchen sink in exchange for your drafting his will, each of you must declare the value of the other services. I mean, there is a certain amount. There's probably not as much bartering as went on, maybe, 2 centuries ago. But there is a certain amount that goes on now. And Uncle Sam wants a piece of that too. So if you make a gentleman's agreement with somebody, look, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. I mean, what's the big deal? That's a gentleman's agreement. No, it's taxable.
Oh, one more. The last bullet point. Money you embezzle is taxable income.
Yeah, I like that. That was a surprise to me. Money you embezzle. That's right. The amount you embezzle is taxable in the year you steal it. If convicted, you owe taxes plus accrued interest for non-payment on the amounts you stole. All right, this one I like. I have to admit, I like this one. If you embezzle money, not only can you go to jail for embezzling, you can go to jail for not paying taxes on it.
Oh, that is the most insane thing I have seen in the tax code. We've been doing this for 3 years. Oh, that one gets to.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. We're about out of time here. Oh, excuse me.
Oh, goodness.
Again, the FAIRtax Guys at gmail.com.
The tax code is getting to them, folks. The tax code is getting to them.
It is. Money you embezzle is taxable income. Now, I wonder if the bank has to report that to the IRS when they figure out how much you've swiped.
Yeah, fortunately, I'm retired, so I have nothing no place to embezzle it from.
Oh, man. I threw you a curveball. You threw me a wiffle ball on that one. But the FAIRtax Guys at gmail.com. Again, we do invite you to get in touch with us here at FAIRtax Power Radio or on our FAIRtax page and get involved in getting the fair tax passed. If you are not a volunteer in your state organization, you need to be one. If you don't have a state organization, you need to start one. In any case, you need to join Americans for Fair Taxation. That's the National Grassroots Organization, AFFT. That's the guys that are really sending folks to Washington, talking to the Congress critters. They need your support both financially and just your number. They need to show these folks up in Washington, hey, this organization represents X number of people, and the bigger number that X is, the more power we're going to have with the Congress critters to get this taken care of.
Going back to the state organization, if you're not sure if you have a state organization, go to fairtax.org, and there is information there on the state organization. So you can find out on fairtax.org. And while you're there, make a nice little contribution.
Yeah, and if you're in Florida, come see our new president. We'll do that. Well, I hope the press is kinder to you than it is to the president in the White House at the moment. But anyway,
well, let's hope we don't get any press.
Yes, that'll. Other than to say the fair tax is passed.
Yep.
Lean on your Congress critters. You can do that in 2 ways. You can visit their offices in person. You can make phone calls, or you can vote on PopVox.
Yep.
The staff does watch that.
Phone calls carry a lot of weight, folks. They really do. Call your congressmen and senators' offices and tell them you expect them to support and co-sponsor the fair tax, or you want to know why.
Absolutely. And the webinar once a month.
Yeah, the webinar. It's generally the 4th Thursday of the month at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can go to fairtax.org/webinar. You have to register in advance. So go to fairtax.org/webinar and register for that.
Okay. I think we're just about out. I've still got my giggle box turned over that the IRS wants to know about money that you embezzled and pay taxes on that.
That's a good one.
Bad enough that sends you to jail, but then you've got. But again, that's the complexity of the tax code that people don't understand.
Yeah.
Your Honor, I didn't realize I had to pay taxes on that one.
I have to admit, that's the only part of the income tax code I like.
Oh, mercy. Okay, well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio before I completely lose it here. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
Reminding you again that the fair tax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming. Don't stand